So just to give you a bit of background, I'm a historian. I'm a historian of 18th century British and Irish history in the main. But the reason I'm convening this programme for public history is that I spent a good decade working myself within the museums and heritage sector. And I've also worked in roles that really move between kind of academic history and public history environments. So I have some experience working directly in those areas. So I'm here really to give you a bit of an outline of this really exciting MA programme that we have at Queen's. It's a relatively new programme. It's only in its this will be its third year in September, but it was a really long time in the making, and it's something that has long roots here at Queen's. So far, the programme is receiving really excellent student feedback, so we're really proud of what we've done so far and hope we can tell you a little bit today about why it's such an interesting one to take. So I guess one question would be, we've had why we decided to teach public history instead of our usual programmes of just history or various different kinds of history. Now we continue to teach those programmes, but we were drawn to public history partly because lots of staff in the school at Queen's were already engaging in all sorts of different public history activities. So they were working with our historic houses, they were working with our museums, they were involved perhaps in policy making, so informing some of the governmental policies in this region or in other places in the world. And some of our staff were also involved in talking about history through the medium of film or television. So we had this real pool of experience in this realm of public history. We also recognised that Queen's was extremely well placed to put on such a programme. We have really strong local links with different heritage organisations, and we also have, Gemma was alluding to our interesting kind of location within the kind of British Isles, but of course our location and place in the world means that we have really great connections not only with Britain but also the Republic of Ireland, and we've built as an institution some fantastic links also across the globe, most especially with lots of institutions and organisations in the North America. So there was also seemed to be kind of unique potential at Queen's to put on a public history programme that was a little bit different from all the others that were available. We are, as you're probably aware, a post-conflict region. And so this context is a really unusual, complex and fascinating space for thinking about history generally, but also especially difficult histories, perhaps that people find hard to discuss and explore, and also contested histories. So history that people may disagree on quite definitely. So this was one of the big reasons why we thought Queen's could offer people something really different, unlike a lot of the other public history courses that you would find across the country and further afield. So before we move on, I would like, if you can think of one, to give me a little example in the chat of a form of public history that you've perhaps been influenced by and that might have brought you to being interested in this course. I'd be really interested to know where you're coming from. But before I respond to that, I'll just move on and tell you a little bit about, I guess, what we think public history is. It's quite a broad term and it takes a little bit of unpacking. So basically, we have conceptualised public history quite broadly. We're thinking of it in terms of the work that history does in the public sphere. Now, the public sphere can mean many different things, as I'm sure you're aware. It also means history that is created by or for public audiences. So history that's not necessarily created by academics like me, but by other people, or created for different audiences. Also, public history as a discipline is interested in the practicalities of making history accessible to wider audiences. So rather than having the kinds of history that is only written by and read by people in universities and that kind of institution, we're thinking about the kinds of history that moves beyond those boundaries. We're also interested in how history is used and often abused as well. So history is sometimes used in political argumentation. It's sometimes leveraged to make certain points in different kinds of cultural environments. And as historians and public historians especially, we can be concerned with those sorts of uses, and we can be critically engaged with those and think about how we can make them positive uses potentially. And we're also really interested, especially in this programme, because of that context of Northern Ireland and the sort of space we're working in the challenges of negotiating difficult public histories in a modern world, okay? So, oh, great. Thanks, Peter. I can see that you did the Cabinet's Curiosity. That's a fantastic module and a great basis for this. It's good to know. Okay, so just moving on, I'll tell you a little bit about the course content, what we've got involved here. Obviously, you can find quite a bit of information on the Queen's website here, but I'll just give you a bit of an overview. The course content it includes the things you can see on the slide here, the concepts in history, ways of being a historian, a module that is the kind of keystone module called History and its Audiences that I'll come to in a little minute, and some stuff really around the theory, but also the practice of public history. And as I say, this idea of difficult or contested public histories does run through a lot of this programme. Having said that, I think it's really worth stressing that the programme is quite flexible. There are certain things that are fixed, which I'll tell you about, but you can really carve your own path here. And you can make sure that you develop your own interests. And there are various points where you get quite personalised supervision for your own research projects, and that's especially where you can begin to build your own expertise. So you can approach it in a number of ways. You can keep your programme very broad, taking a variety of different kinds of subjects and modules to give you a broad perspective, or you can specialise from quite an early stage. So that's the key to it. It's quite flexible and allows you to develop your own path. And I think that's really important, especially considering the kinds of careers that you might be interested in developing as you move on from this programme. So let me just have a look in the chat here. Oh, I can see, yes, an Erasmus year trip. Amsterdam has some wonderful public history sites. Thanks very much, Sinead. That's a really interesting one. Great. And Josie, I see you've been working in living history museums. Well, there's one that we work very closely with in Northern Ireland, a kind of living history type space, and it definitely poses loads of really interesting questions about visitor experience and the communication of history. But Colonial Williamsburg is a fantastic example. I've met lots of people who've worked in that place. Interesting. So many experiences here. I can see a lot of you are coming from substantial backgrounds within public history, which is really great to see. Okay, so I'll just move on now. Oh yes, the other thing I should mention, I'll come back to, is that you have what's really at the heart of the programme is this double-weighted module, which is the internship placement. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And of course, at the end, as in which this would be the same for most MA programmes in the UK, is that you would have this 20,000 word dissertation. So a really substantial personalised research project that is the last thing you tend to do on the MA, so it comes at a kind of culmination of that. So between the placement and the dissertation, you have these really substantial projects that you can get your teeth into, and there's some smaller assignments relating to the different modules. Okay, so let me just see. So as I said, we've got this module, it's a kind of capstone module called History and its Audiences. And I'll try and sketch out for you the kinds of things you'll be doing in the different semesters. So in semester one, starting, as Gemma was mentioning, in September, late September, we kick off with History and its Audiences. And it's a really important one because it provides you with inroads into all sorts of different public history debates. What we do is we get in loads of really interesting guest speakers with specialisms in all sorts of different areas, many from kind of heritage sector or from documentary makers from kind of production companies or people who've been involved in influencing policy making at Stormont and so on. So we get all these different kinds of people to give you lots and lots of different ways of thinking about public history, and we hope that from this you can start to pick out the ones that most appeal to you and that you can start to develop your ideas around those. We do some interesting events here where we do roundtable discussions where we get quite a lot of people who work within a public history environment, and we bring them into the classroom to have a kind of discussion with each other and also with you. So the real key here is that we're moving between theoretical and conceptual ideas about public history and into dealing with real life issues. We really try to make those links between theory and practice with this module. At the same time in this term, you will do another module which is really about the skills of being a historian, where you look at lots of different kinds of genres of history writing, and you think about also the techniques of the historian, some of those skills. Now, those of you coming from a kind of BA in history, some of that will be familiar and it'll be just developing your skills further. But those of you who perhaps come from other kinds of disciplines, this will be a really helpful way into sort of how historians think, how they write and how they work. Because public history is always part public but part history, so we need those historical skills in place. Actually, can I just ask for the chat if anyone's coming from a discipline outside of history or something similar to, but not quite a straight history degree, because we recruit from all over the place and it's really interesting to see who is coming to our programmes. So the other thing that you do in semester one is a kind of individually negotiated topic, which is a kind of mini research project. It's quite a nice thing as a preparation for your larger dissertation. You can do it often on a different topic, but it just really allows you to develop a sort of area of research yourself and to be supervised by a member of academic staff. So you get that one-to-one support with that. So moving on to semester two, and you get into really the internship. The internship is so important to this programme. We base a lot around it. So from the very earliest days of the first semester, I will be getting to know you all individually and trying to think about your interests and helping you to match you to an internship provider, a host organisation that would really suit you. So we spend a bit of time over this to get it right, because you spend a full 30 days at the internship, and so it's really important that it's something that suits your interests as best as we can. You also do a module called Case Studies in History, which allows you to do some really primary source focused work with a range of our academic staff on different subjects. Often we make sure there are subjects that are available to you to really get to know some elements of Irish history and Irish history relating to the city that you are living and working in as well. Some people want to do other kinds of modules, but many of our students are really keen to dig into that local history to get to know the context in which we are working as public historians. So then also we use the second semester to get into dissertation mode and to set that up for over the summertime when you really conduct the research for that with your supervisor. As I say, a real thread through our course is this concept of contested or difficult histories, and in Northern Ireland, and we also have really strong specialisms within the department in US history and also some great connections with US institutions. So increasingly we're collaborating with organisations in the States to think through some of these really difficult questions, things about public memory or collective memory and memorials. There's been lots, you'll probably be aware, in the States, but also in places like Ireland, particularly around statues in public spaces and what they mean, who they represent, who they don't represent, of course use of public space and so on. And you know, museums themselves with their own kind of histories that might be questionable in terms of modern ethics, in terms of their collecting policies. You know, the sorts of collections that some museums have amassed are obviously the products of kind of empire. So these are things that we have to, you know, approach with a critical eye. And we'll do a field trip, one or more field trips as part of the programme as a whole. We often take a field trip to Derry because it's just such an interesting place for public history, with its different museums, but also it's also literally its public space there. It's a really interesting spot. Okay, so the other thing I should mention before we go on any further is, I guess, these are the modules that you'll take. These are the sorts of subjects you'll be dealing with, but we do also have to think a little bit about how we will be teaching within this COVID-19 kind of period. I mean, hopefully things will be much better than they are now globally, and that we will be able to do a kind of mixture, at least to begin with, of some online and some socially distanced teaching. Or maybe we will be in an even better position than that and be able to do most of our work face to face. But what we're aiming for is to do a combination of these things to begin with until it's safe to be in the space altogether. Safety, clearly, everyone's health clearly is the first priority, but we've done some work here about thinking about the kinds of teaching that we do that lend themselves well to online delivery. And certainly if we were doing more online delivery, at least initially, I would be making sure that I'd be catching up with you individually on Skype or chat or on the phone to really get to know what your perspectives are and what your needs are as a student, and to be able to do that process of getting to know you and your interests well enough to match you to that placement. So the personal touch will certainly be there, even if we are working through some of these online kind of programs. Okay, lovely. So I see, okay, teaching degree with history, very interesting. So that's great, Bethany, in terms of education and within the public history space. It's certainly a massive area for public historians. Loads of public historians are working, teaching in various ways in museums and so on. And then BA was history and sociology. Interesting, Sinead. That's actually a fascinating combination, would be very helpful to this this programme. So yes, just to say a little bit more about the kind of, the academic side, the assessment has been quite carefully designed for this programme to try and give you a breadth of things. So you do have some sort of standard academic essays, which most of you will be quite familiar with that kind of format from your undergraduate studies, but we also mix it up. So we have got blog posts as some of the assignments. These are helpful because they're just really gearing you up for that kind of skill, that way of writing that can be very helpful if you move out into the world, into careers in public history environments. Increasingly, this is an important skill to have, so we tend to use that to build those real world skills as part of the programme. And then the portfolio is really something that relates to the placement, the internship placement. We think every internship is basically completely unique. The experiences that you have there are really, really different and varied, and that's all to the good. But we want to be sure that we're not sort of trying to shoehorn everybody's experiences into one format. So what we do is we have this portfolio arrangement where it really allows you to craft your own structure, ask your own questions of yourself, and present very, very different kinds of evidence and analysis from one another. It's a flexible format, and we work out the structure of it individually with you, and that allows you to present on what could be, quite a varied experience within a given kind of workplace. And the post presentation forms part of that response to your internship too. And it's a really lovely occasion. We have it in the Great Hall. We have a reception. All the internship hosts come along to see you. As you can see from the picture there, it's a really nice occasion. It's a bit celebratory at the end of semester too. Okay, so if I move on now, so we've got assessment there. Yeah, I just want to say a little bit more in detail about the placement, because as I say, it's such an important part of what we do. We spend the first semester making sure that we're getting to know you, matching you up with these appropriate projects that you can be involved in. The placement itself is worth 2 modules because it's really substantial. It's 30 days. Now you can start the placement usually in January, and you're usually finishing up towards the end of March. So it gives us a bit of flexibility there. If you did have a part-time job or something, you can usually fit it around that. It doesn't have to be conducted all in one go. It can be conducted kind of part-time. Usually we allow you as an individual to work that out with your host organisation so that you can come up with a plan that suits everyone well. Now, usually you will have a project that you're kind of assigned to. We tend to get the organisation to come up with a project proposal for you that you could have a look at before you start and think about. But you will also do a little bit of shadowing staff, getting to know the organisation, how it works, and sort of spending time within that space. So some of it is shadowing, but also some of it is project work as well. Some placements will have one big project that you mainly do that has something really substantial that comes out of it, and other ones you might be having a series of smaller projects where you get a broader range of experiences. But what I would say is that almost everyone comes out of a project placement like this with something that they can really put on their CV, something really solid that they can refer to when they're trying to gain work in the sector later. Oh, and can I just ask in the chat if anyone has what your what you would like to move on to after doing a program like this, because some people do stay on and do research in academia. That's certainly one thing that people sometimes go on to, but many people take this program specifically as a kind of launch pad into a particular type of work. So I'd be interested to know what your kind of aims are longer term, and maybe we can respond to those later. Okay, so let me switch on. So yeah, just to give you a bit more detail here, these are just some of the organisations that we've been working with. You can see there's all different ones here. There's lots of museums and libraries and archives, as you can imagine. And then we have interesting combinations. So we have the Ulster Museum, which is a national museum, and it's kind of publicly funded. It's free to enter. But then we have places like the Titanic Foundation that are an explicitly a visitor attraction with it's a fee. You have to pay a fee to enter, and it has quite a different relationship in terms of the sorts of visitors it attracts and its relationship with kind of the tourism industry. So we have some interestingly different organisations. We have really massive organisations and really tiny ones as well. Somewhere like Simon Stables is a smaller organisation. We work with the BBC, we work with Hillsborough Castle, which is part of Historic Royal Palaces. We work with lots of National Trust organisations. You can see some of them listed there: Mount Stuart, the Argoury. Castle Leslie is actually a privately owned historic house, so we have a good working relationship with the owner of that house, and we have had students go there. This year, actually, we had a really interesting new organisation approaches, and we sent a number of students to them. So each year I'm looking for new partner organisations. So these are some we've worked with before, but we are always gathering new contacts and trying to offer you more and more opportunities and different opportunities, I guess. And one we worked with this year was an organisation called Cara Friend, which was it's actually an LGBTQ rights organisation. They started off with a kind of helpline, I think, in the 1980s and 90s, and they were just at a point as an organisation where they'd been involved in supporting people in this region, but they'd also been involved in kind of advocacy for LGBTQ rights. But they were just about at a point where they wanted to look at their own archives and think about their own history. And so several of our students went in and worked with them, and have had a really fascinating time looking at this quite recent history, just at the end of the 20th century there. Okay, so just move on one slide. Let me just have a quick look in the chat here. I see. So some people would love to move it. Peter, you'd love to do research, move into academia and research. Yep, certainly. An MA, of course, is really necessary to move on to PhD work, but it's also brilliant preparation. Other people I can see interested in museums, museum work, living. Yeah, these would be common trajectories for our students. And we maintain really great relationships with lots of our alumni, and we've seen where many of them have gone off. I mean, some of them are now running their own public history courses in the US and other places. We've got people in archive museums, historic houses. So yeah, a really good track record. Lovely, that's great to see. Thanks very much for your comments there. Yeah, so I just wanted to quickly mention that besides the modules that we're offering the programme itself, the kind of teaching you get on that, and of course this internship, so you'd have this strong relationship with another organisation where you would undertake this internship. You are part of a course of a really vibrant research community at Queen's. We have really a great space. It's a great space to study this subject, because not only do you have this whole history department, lots of other MA students at the same time as you know, studying historical topics. So there's a big community of you here, but then you have your own cohort of public historians, and you will find the Centre for Public History that we have in the school really a good source of information about your discipline, but also it offers seminars at least once a month at 4 p.m. on Fridays, where we have specific speakers. We draw in speakers from all over the globe to talk about their own public history research or practice. So you can go to these seminars. There's often lots of sociability around them, and also the centre itself organises lots of public lectures and a conference every now and again. And we've had some really fantastic guest speakers. So we've had Professor David Armitage from Harvard, Deborah Mack, Dr. Deborah Mack from the Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, was just a fantastic speaker, talking about all the complicated issues that they had encountered when they were first trying to establish this museum, and speak about a history in this public space that hadn't been talked about enough in that context. And more recently we had Professor Catherine Hall, who's been based in London, but who's a real expert in histories of empire as well, and so really fascinating discussions coming out of that. So not only do you have lots and lots of staff at Queen's who have real interests and practices around public history, but we have a centre which organises events that will also key in with your own studies, and I think that is a real plus actually of taking the programme at Queen's. Okay, so what I'm going to do is flick onto the next slide here, but I feel like I'm going to hand back over to Gemma now for her to continue for a little bit, and happy to take any questions at the end. Thanks a lot.
Okay, that's great, Leonie. Thanks for that. So as Leonie said, feel free to ask any questions in the chat and she'll answer them at the end. Okay, so just to give you a wee bit of information about fees and scholarships, this slide shows the fee for 2020 entry for students who are in Northern Ireland and EU outside of GB. So if you're England, Scotland, Wales, you pay a slightly higher fee. So the Northern Ireland and EU fee excluding GB is 6140 for 2020 entry, and the England, Scotland, Wales fee is 6900. You may be glad to know that there's loans available for students from those regions. So these actually only came in a couple of years ago to Northern Ireland. So you can actually get a student loan with low interest rates, just like your undergraduate loan. So that link provides more details on those. Okay, so the fees and scholarships for international students, the fee is 16,900 for 2020 entry. And you'll be glad to know there's a number of scholarships on offer. So if you meet the conditions of your offer, you will get a £2,000 automatic fee discount, so no need to apply for that. You can also avail of the Early Bird Award. If you meet the full conditions of your offer and pay 90% of your fees by the stipulated date, you will receive a 10% fee discount off your gross fee. So you can have that scholarship alongside the one above it, so 2,000 plus a further 10% off. Just to let you know that the early bird deadline has been changed in light of COVID-19 to the 15th of September. We also have a small number of full fee scholarships in the university, the Vice Chancellor Scholarship. The bad news is that the deadline is tomorrow. So if you have an offer, you can apply for that. And there's details given in the link at the bottom. So there's small numbers, I say, of full fee ones. If you're a current international student at the university, you are not, the above scholarships are not open to you, but you would get a 20% fee discount. So if you're a current international student progressing to this programme, international student that is. So more details may be found in the link at the bottom of that slide. Some of you, I noticed, are considering this course for 2021 entry. So if you haven't yet applied, and some obviously are considering it for this year and haven't yet applied, you may apply online on the course finder. If you're an international student, some international students apply through their agents because they can help with visa applications and so on. I'm just going to skip that video. We'll post a link to some of the videos in the chat. It's a video of Belfast. So I think we're going to open it up now for further questions. So it's your opportunity to ask whatever questions you wish. If anybody's brave enough, they can answer over the mic or feel free to just post your questions in the chat. So ask away, basically. Thank you.
Okay, Bridget, let me just see. If classes are going to start as online classes or be delayed a month, how will this impact when we can enter our housing? It's a very good question. Gemma, would you have any ideas on the housing question?
Basically, I think the accommodation is looking at different start dates. I think they're mainly, but this will be confirmed, they're mainly looking at start dates at the end of September and then in January again. But there could be different options, but they're definitely looking at 2 lots, if you know what I mean, of entry. So they're aware, obviously, that, put it this way, the accommodation will fall in line and how the classes are being offered, put it that way. But we'll let you know. I think probably in about a month to 6 weeks, we'll know more about what's happening generally, a month to 2 months, and we'll clarify things as we go along, basically. Deadline for applying to the course. There's no actual deadline. We generally recommend that students apply by the end of June at the latest, but we will accept applications after that. If you want to defer entry, that is probably fine. You just email admissions if you wish to defer entry until 2021. If you're an international student, there's a couple of different emails, and I'll post them in the chat now for admissions.
And would those emails help with the question I noticed that Jackie mentioned is issues about visas in relation to because I wouldn't have the answer to that just here and now, but I'm quite sure you can get advice.
Yeah, basically with your visa, your visa starts from the date that you're on campus. So say, for example, you were studying online for a couple of months, your visa won't will give the start date that you're actually on campus, so it won't start when you're still at home, if you know what I mean, if you're an international student, basically. So I hope that clarifies it. If you have any questions, I will put some email addresses in the chat, and then we will send the email addresses out in the emails that we're when we send the recording of this as well. So.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions here. I'm just going to work my way through, and if I miss anyone, just give me a shout. What sorts of things would stand out for us in terms of an application? I mean, to be honest, we're quite open in the sense we often draw people from a kind of history background, but we've taken students who've come from all sorts of different disciplines. So we're interested more in how you're using your own knowledge and experiences to date to think through public history. And public history is such a broad area. It can include more traditional work that we might immediately think of in terms of museums, but it might also be thinking in very different realms. So the way that history is discussed in different online fora, in terms of the way that policy making is conducted. It could be in terms of cultural activities and celebrations within a particular setting. We could be thinking of how those draw on history. We can think of history in terms of built heritage, in terms of objects, but we can think of it in terms of memories and kind of intangible heritage as well. So we're looking for how you're thinking about public history, and we would regard very many different things to be public history. So it's more about your interest and motivation to study this rather than something else. You know, it's kind of the why public history question, right? Like, why are you not just doing a history MA? Why would you want to make it public history, and what motivates you, rather than kind of concrete, kind of specific qualifications and specific subject areas. I think that's what I'd be looking for anyway. Now, I had a question here about PhD funding. So some of you may be interested in doing this at MA as a route through to PhD research. In terms of being in a good footing for PhD funding, yeah, as good as any other programme, there wouldn't be any difference there. It would be more the case that you're putting yourself in a good place for PhD funding would be more to do with gaining good grades through this programme and in your previous studies, and also basically carving out a good research topic. So usually an MA is a way of crafting a kind of area for yourself. The dissertation is often a kind of a stepping stone to further research. So it would be really about getting a subject matter that can attract funding, but you can certainly do that through this programme. I have a question here about fees. I'm not sure that I can answer that one. Now, where was it? Sorry. Yeah, Irish citizen John, currently residing in England.
Yeah, I posted something in the chat about that. It probably depends on his nationality and how long he's lived there. So it's best probably to check that with admissions. I posted the email address for admissions in the chat.
Lovely, thanks Gemma, sorry I missed that. Francis, are there opportunities for work study for international students? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Do you mean kind of internship placements or something else? I might have to come back to that if you could clarify.
Christine, I notice you're asking about a copy of the SlideShare, so just to let you know, the recording will be sent out to everybody. It'll probably be sent out within a couple of days, so that will feature the slides there.
Peter, really good question on the internship module. Yeah, I mean, at the moment we're playing this by ear, so I will be contacting all our usual hosts over the summer and into September to sort of sound them out and see what the impact of COVID has been for them, and what plans they have in terms of reopening and responding to any future waves of COVID. And I should be able to get a good sense from that of where they stand at least. Now, it has to be said that we will have to play it by ear. Having said that, I will be sounding them out on projects that could be done wholly or in part autonomously. So lots and lots of our projects do involve digitized collections or archives that are digitized. So there are some cataloging projects, there are other sort of research projects where it's a case of reading through certain things. So there are lots of projects that are already at least somewhat digital, and I would be sort of sounding out for the potential that we have there. Having said that, we also have a little bit of flexibility about when exactly those things take place. We give ourselves quite a biggish window, and so there might be some possibility of doing a burst when we can, taking a break from it and doing another burst later, or something of that nature. So there's a number of different ways I think that we can cope with this, but one thing that is important is that the internship doesn't happen until the new year, and the way most people seem to be planning at the moment is that there's a feeling that we may be over the worst by then. Of course, we don't absolutely know that, but certainly that seems to be the kind of sounds that are being made at the moment. So that's what we're planning for, but as I say, there'll be contingency planning behind that. It's a very good question. Let me just have a quick look, check I haven't missed anyone here. Peter, okay. Francis, oh, I see, sorry. MAs, in general, MA students don't do teaching assistant roles within the school. Tends to be more PhD students. Having said that, I didn't really mention this in the talk because it really depends what comes up. But this year, I happen to have a number of opportunities came up kind of ad hoc through the kinds of networks that we have, people wanting some of our students to work on a particular short-term project or something of this nature, a public history related project. So we had some of our students go out and do various bits of paid work within that sector, and others went out and did other forms of volunteering on different projects that again fleshed out their public history CV. So although there isn't kind of academic teaching on offer for MA level students, there can be public history related opportunities that come up. I can't guarantee them by any stretch, but they do come up, and I would always throw them out as to the cohorts as soon as I find out about anything like that, whether it's voluntary or paid. I hope that answers your question a little bit. What have we got here? One more question from Peter. Oh, yes. Yes, So Maclay Library, fantastic library, fantastic special collections. So, you know, we send our students all over Northern Ireland, right out to, you know, Derry or kind of Antrim Coast, all sorts of different places people go, but also some do stay very close to home. And so we've often had internship placements within our special collections in the Maclay Library. It is an archive, it is a very unique collection. They often have research projects there. And so, yeah, if that was something that interested you, absolutely we would work with the Maclay to fashion a project for you. And I should say, you know, I source a lot of the projects myself and I sort of offer them up to you. Having said that, I have had students who've had a very definite interest in a particular organisation who found their own project and you know, with our support. A student this year went and worked with a production company that I didn't previously have links with and has done a fantastic project there, and he thought that himself. So where you have an interest, we certainly try and facilitate that. Thanks, Gemma, that's perfect, the link there. Yeah, that's great. Okay, sorry, I feel like I might have I missed anyone? Yes, there is. We have interlibrary loans at Queen's, so we have good access to e-journals and a very good, well-equipped library. And increasingly, I'm ordering more and more for, you know, that is specific to this programme. But we also can get interlibrary loans because, of course, when you get into your more specialised research projects, you have certain needs, and so sometimes they need to be brought in especially. Now, one thing I should say. During this period of COVID, interestingly, we and our students at Queen's and everyone, in fact, general public in many cases, has got much better access to online facilities. So not only has our library invested in lots more ebooks, access to different journals and resources and databases, but many places have actually opened up academic reading, you know, resources that were behind a paywall before. So one of the pluses, very few pluses, of this period of time has been unprecedented widespread access for Queen's students and staff, but also more generally to online materials, whether that's primary historical sources or, you know, scholarship. Sorry, Bridget. Yeah, Sinead and Bridget, on the question of when you would be thinking about your dissertation topic. That's a really good one, and it's nice that you're thinking about it already. I mean, some students come to our degree program with a very precise sense of what they want, where they want to end up, right, and with a topic in mind, and that is fine. And then they can start constructing that idea from as early on as possible, okay? And they can often reflect that subject matter in their various assignments where they've got scope to choose the topic that they write about. Others, it takes a bit longer. Like they get into the course, they start doing history and its audiences, they're trying to learn about all sorts of different areas of public history, and they're trying to, you know, find out for themselves what might suit them best. So there isn't a right answer. If you are very specific in your interests, you can really start working on your dissertation ideas from the first day you're with us. But it's quite usual to spend the first semester basically getting to grips with public history, thinking about what internship placement you might do, and then in the new year, in semester 2, starting to make decisions about your dissertation proposal, because the deadlines for that aren't until March time, and of course you would conduct the dissertation research and writing over the summer. Let me have a look. Other funding opportunities past the scholarships. I'm not quite sure, but again, I think we can provide you links to anything, any information on those issues of funding, fees, and so on. Tony, is there arrangements with other universities regarding the use of their libraries, a general arrangement, or might it be a special request? That really comes down to interlibrary loans. Interlibrary loans covers all university collections and other collections besides, so you can really get almost anything you need that way. It depends on your research topic. You know, we have very good collections on lots of areas at Queen's in-house. You can often get everything you need that way, especially as you move into MA work and you spend more time looking at journals. Frankly, academic journals are a fantastic source that is kind of underused often at undergraduate level. Most of the key debates in our field happen in academic journals, and we have access to those online, so you can really see a lot of that just from home even. It's more primary sources where you're doing archival historical research, and then some people find a trip to Dublin can be helpful. So there are obviously lots of national collections there. We also have the Public Record Office of Northern Ireland, and that has a lot of archival collections as well. So we have really great access to things. I think if we are still suffering from this pandemic, we will have even more access to electronic things. But we have, but yeah, so I've never had a problem where a student has not been able to get the kind of resources that they need. Nice, Jackie, that's great. Thank you for reaching out to everyone there. Have I missed anyone here? Let me have a look. I can see people interested in getting together before the start of term. That would be fantastic. I have to say our current cohort is a brilliant, and they're all on a WhatsApp group together, and they have been, they've been through this COVID crisis together. They've been real support to each other. They are a great group, and I think they've really, it's been their own little research community within the larger research community, and that's been really great to see. How many places are usually offered on the course? To date, we've had a sort of 15 to 20 in a cohort. That's been typical so far. But that could change, and we would sort of adjust our teaching to fit the number that we have, basically. Anyone else that I'm missing here?
With regards to starting the group, I don't know if it helps. Whenever I email everyone, I could ask if you want to share your email addresses, or so that I can put people in contact with each other, if that helps.
That would be fantastic. So yeah, and Gemma, I know that you're going to send everyone on these various resources and links and things, so people should, and the recording of this, so you can have a check back on anything that you didn't quite catch this afternoon. Yeah, I've got another question here from Jackie. Any idea of the typical student-professor relationship? Basically, it's kind of interesting how this year's been a good example of how we did have when we were all in person and met each other every week, and that kind of thing. We had this great kind of group kind of relationship. So that, as I say, this group has the cohort themselves are very mutually supporting, and then I would see the students every week, and my colleagues would as well, who they were teaching, and then of course the program director, who's me, would be also the advisor to your studies. So you would have you could always come to me to have a one-to-one. You could also have a one-to-one with any of your other teachers on other modules. So you can always have that kind of one-to-one chat, whether about how things are going, about a specific question you might have to do with an assignment or anything really. That's always there. But it's been interesting this year because we had a really good kind of group. It was a really good relationship, but since we've all been shut up in our own homes, there's been this kind of that's had to move into the virtual zone, and I've been spending a lot more time sort of speaking on Skype or on the phone individually to students to make, partly because it's been a really difficult time for people, so advising on their studies as my role suggests, but also catching up with people, checking everyone's going okay. So I certainly found the kind of lack of the face-to-face has meant that we've developed our kind of student-teacher relationship more on a one-to-one basis, or more frequently on a one-to-one basis, but that's been good as well. So yeah, you have a lot of access to teaching staff in there. support and also their expertise. So you've got me as your advisor to studies, you'll have the other people who teach your different modules, there'll be an internship host person who you work closely with, and then there'll be your supervisor for your dissertation, and they're all likely to be different people. So you'd have lots of different people who can support you with different aspects of your learning. Thanks. Okay, Francis, current students who might be willing to chat about their experiences, especially international students, I'm sure there would be. I could certainly check on that actually, so I'll just put that on my to-do list. To check about, so you'd be interested in international students' experiences, and then hopefully I can relay a contact through Gemma perhaps. So you can have a chat about that, and as you'd be aware, the students that we currently have just been through the eye of the storm in terms of COVID. Okay, let me see if I missed anyone here. I imagine you get your school email. Do you mean the QUB email, Bridget? I guess you would get that when you are properly registered, which would be at the start of term. That's just in late September there. Let me see if I've missed anyone. Sorry. I can see you giving each other your email addresses. That's great. Yeah, I'll try and look for those current students, see if we can put you in touch. I don't know off the top of my head the library opening times, but that would be if you just Google QUB library, they will definitely be there.
I put something in the chat there, Leonie. It varies according to the time of year. So it's actually generally open to 1 AM in the morning, and then at busy times when there's assignment hand-ins and peaks like that, it's 24 hours basically, and there's a PG specific study area in the graduate school.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks, Peter. That's good to hear. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a glitch with my scrolling down, so I keep. Okay, the graduate school has wonderful facilities, also for group working and so on. It's fantastic. Is there anything else that I've missed? Any other questions at all, or anyone that I've missed somehow? No worries if not. And if something occurs to you, subsequently, you can always drop me a line. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you might have. Okay, I wonder if we're about ready to wrap up then, unless we have any last minute thoughts or questions. Oh, thanks, Josie. That's fantastic. That would be great. Well, that's initially actually, Christine, and that's what I had thought the question was about in terms of work study, because internships are obviously a form of work experience, but they aren't paid. So with internships, I should have said actually, you do get your expenses. So you would be able to claim back your travel expenses and so on for that period of time. Having said that, they are not paid, unfortunately. Having said that, that also can be important in terms of visa restrictions and so on. So they are a form of work study in the sense that you are doing work experience and studying, but they're not paid opportunities.
Just to confirm, international students can generally work up to 20 hours per week. It depends on your visa. So some students have part-time jobs outside of the programme in lots of different areas, and the university has lots of jobs in the university itself, such as working in the library, the Students' Union and so on. So they're generally advertised on a platform called My Future, which you'll gain access to whenever you enrol.
Fantastic. Thanks, Gemma. That was really useful to know. I mean, that's it. Lots and lots of our students are balancing work and study, so we completely understand that. I'm going to give you away with my camera turned on, but thanks very much, everyone, for taking this call. I hope it's helped you make some decisions about what's coming next. And yeah, anything further, I'd be very happy to answer by email. Take care.